Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a corporate sales coach and professional image consultant. Today's guest is Amy Reczek. Amy, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks, I'm excited to be here.
For sure. So Amy, we're just going to jump right into what I like to call a conversational warm-up. I've got 4 questions that I kind of like to ask my guests just to, again, kind of get warmed up and just get the ball rolling, so to speak. So the first question, Amy, I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, so I don't.
Perfect.
I might be one of the only ones, but I have never enjoyed mornings.
Okay.
I'm not a morning person. I am not the 5 a.m.er. I have tried.
Uh-huh.
I thought it would change when I went to corporate and needed to be in the office every morning at 7 a.m. Nope, didn't change.
Okay.
Still didn't like it.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's been a struggle my entire life.
Yeah.
And I just finally decided, I'm 42 years old right now, but I finally decided when I was 40 that I'm just going to embrace the fact that I'm just not a morning person.
I love it, yeah.
Because it took, I really did have a lot of angst for so long about, why can't I do that? And why am I not one of those people? And you see it all the time on social media. Get up at 5 a.m. and start your day, and your day's going to be magical, and I just cannot.
Right.
So yeah, so I am a good, 7:30 wake-up person, roll out of bed. My perfect morning is that I don't really have to go anywhere right away.
Okay.
I can have my coffee, check my emails, slowly move into the day. That is my perfect morning, and how I kind of get going. I check my social media, I do my emails, kind of get the lay of the land for the day.
Cool. Now I like it. You're not the first, but there haven't been many people that don't have like a very specific morning routine. But I really appreciate what you said in regards to like, hey, like I've kind of just embraced like this is how I am, this is who I am, and I'm cool with it. So that's great. I love it. All right, so. For the next 3, if there's more than one, please feel free to share, Amy. But the next question that I have for you is, do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Yeah, I have 2.
Okay.
I have What's Your Why by Simon Sinek, and then Presence by Amy Cuddy.
Okay.
Cuddy is Cuddy.
All right.
And her book actually transformed the way I sold. So I read her book quite a while ago when I was about 3 years into corporate selling, and it completely shifted the way I walked into a room, the way I held myself, the way things really transpired in connecting with my potential clients. So that one's really good.
And What's Your Why by Simon Sinek, and then what's the second one? Presence. Okay, cool. All right, so do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? And I've been prefacing this kind of with, we all go through different seasons in life. So this could be a favorite quote, mantra, or word for maybe this present season of life, or it could be a favorite quote, mantra, or word from a previous season of life. But however you kind of want to take that, go ahead and take that. But favorite quote, mantra, or word.
So I have a few. My favorite word is inspire.
Okay.
I actually have it tattooed on me.
Love it.
I have a couple of kind of quotes and sayings. One is, what if you fail, but oh my dear, what if you fly? I have that framed in my house.
Okay.
We convince by our presence is another one. And I have another one that I just saw the other day, that we're fascinated by the words, but where we meet is in the silence behind them. And that goes completely with everything I do, with connecting and communication without ever speaking. For sure. So those are kind of my hot ones right now.
Okay, cool. Now I want to touch on your word, inspire. What is kind of the what's so special about that word for you specifically?
Yeah, so that goes back to me being a kid, I think, and just my upbringing, and how that was a bit different, and how I was not, quote unquote, your norm, health-wise. Okay. And then coming out of that and just being determined to decide to succeed in some sort of fashion. And inspire to me is twofold. So it's not that I am constantly wanting to inspire others, but the more I can be inspired, I think then I naturally do inspire, because that energy from other people creates that. Absolutely. Cool. Do you remember, like, kind of specifically when that word kind of came into your existence? It came into my existence because people kept telling me it.
Okay.
So
okay.
it was not from me saying, I'm going to inspire and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But it was from people to keep telling me, you're inspirational, or you inspire me.
Cool.
On those levels. So I was like, I need to do something with that.
Yeah.
If you keep hearing it over and over again, you should run with it.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. All right. So the next question is, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast? And if you don't have like a favorite or most listened to podcast per se, maybe there's like an individual or individuals maybe on Instagram or on YouTube that you maybe gain some encouragement from or inspiration to use your word. So is there maybe an individual or individuals or podcasts that you appreciate a lot?
Yeah. So YouTube, definitely Simon Sinek.
Okay.
He just has some great insight
Absolutely.
to corporations and communication and connecting and how we should be doing that within organizations. But he's just fascinating to me, the way he looks at things and takes things apart. He did that What's Your Why on YouTube, so if you haven't watched that, I recommend you watch that. It gives you a different take on how to really present yourself and your company, if you're with a company, in not pushing product and really getting back to why you're there.
Powerful. All right, so we're going to kind of just step into your childhood, your upbringing. If you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, Amy, where did you grow up, and then kind of what were those younger years like, and then kind of once we work our way up kind of like to high school and stuff, we'll kind of stop right there. So
okay, I grew up in Billings, Montana.
Okay,
born and raised. Went to college in Minnesota, but I was born and raised in Montana. I was born with a congenital heart defect, so I had surgery at 6 months old and 2 years old. Open heart surgery, was not available in Montana, as you can imagine.
Right.
So flew to Seattle, at Children's Hospital in Seattle, to have those done. Was followed after that, but those were successful. I was what you call a blue baby, so didn't have enough oxygen for 2 years, so I was always blue. My mom used to tell me that people were always nervous to hold me because of that,
yeah.
which, I get that. But other than that, I really, my parents raised me with not the defect, right? Like I was aware of it, obviously. We had checkups, but if I wanted to do something, then we were going to do it. So my parents divorced when I was about 6. They both remarried a little time frame after that. So I had 4 parents and one of me. I did not have siblings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was an overload of parental guidance, which is awesome in high school.
Right.
But it really was a cool dynamic. My mom and my stepmom were very, very close. They were close all the way through until my mom passed away. And so I think that dynamic and just having them as a team, cheering me on constantly instead of any sort of oddness that usually comes from divorce and step-parents and all that kind of stuff, I never saw that growing up. It was always, all 4 of them were just my family.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. I started singing in 3rd grade.
Okay.
So 3rd grade through high school, I was in musicals, I was in vocal training, and I was in choir. So I was definitely the choir geek growing up. I did play softball for a while up until high school, and then music took over and was just too much, so I dropped softball.
Okay.
But yeah.
So now, in regards to did you call it a heart defect? Is that how you correctly say it? Okay. So in regards to that heart defect, I mean, you mentioned that you had a couple surgeries, but did it really affect you at all, like in childhood or even now in adulthood, or did those surgeries kind of take care of whatever issue you had?
So it's lifelong.
Oh, okay.
I did have a 3rd surgery at 34 years old, so 8 years ago. I will have to have more.
Oh, okay.
So I am monitored. I will say that out of the defects, there's about 35 different defects that you can have when it comes to CHD. Side note, if people don't know about it, it is the #1 defect in infants. 1 child every 15 minutes is born with CHD.
Wow. Okay.
So it is something that is not odd. There are a lot of children around with it, and definitely a lot of adults now. I kind of was that newer cutoff on new technology and all those things to where I am living into an adulthood. So that's a little newer for CHD. But It didn't, you know, looking back now, I can see that it affected me, but growing up, I had no idea.
Right.
But things like PE was horrible for me. I couldn't run around the track, and I never knew why.
Right.
I was exhausted all the time. Those types of things. And it just really didn't correlate. There's a lot of research now that says it's obvious that it's just because of oxygen levels and things like that. But it was frustrating, and especially when you're a kid, you know, when you take everything in and you're embarrassed all the time and you don't really want to just fit in. I never fit in that way. It was a struggle.
Okay. Now, I want to touch a little bit more on the singing. What did singing do for you? I'm assuming, because like I grew up as an athlete, and when you're younger, you like kind of like you mentioned earlier, like we're all trying to like fit in, right? We're trying to find like where we can get that positive reinforcement and where we can feel that love and acceptance and all that type of stuff. For me, sports was kind of that, you know, I got tons of positive reinforcement and just, you know, kind of like fed into itself and things like that. But so kind of back to your story, Amy, like the singing, was that where you really gained a lot of notoriety and a lot of that positive reinforcement? And was it really just something that, you know, just like kind of dominated your life in those younger years?
It did. Excuse me, it did. It got me out of, I never fit in school. I was not the popular one in high school at all. We just, over the holidays, my stepmom said to me, I think if you didn't have music, you probably would have dropped out of high school. Wow. It was not a good time for me. But music was my constant. It was my constant all the way through. And it was my constant as a family, if you will. So same with sports, same with anything. You have a community. If anyone has been in theater or knows about theater, that is a community beyond community. Similar to professional sports, those types of things, right? You never lose that community. And I did. I grew up with a handful of kids that were in that ended up going to the same school as I went to, ended up going to the same college I went to because it was for music, all those types of things. So it really did have a huge influence on the community and how it was a safe place for me. But it also was a huge creative space. So that took it to an entirely different level. You know, I could create on stage, I could create vocally, I could really take those things and elements and work with them on my own to create me, basically, and find who I was.
So did the singing then kind of like when you were in that creative space or that safe space, so to speak, with the singing, did it just like really light you up then? Did you find a lot of joy, or was it just kind of something that you found that you were kind of good at and you just kind of went with it?
I was not good at it.
Oh, okay.
In third grade. I sucked.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
But I worked with some vocal training, and I worked with the choir, the local community kids choir that I was in. There was a great director, the Alice Lyon was her name there. And she just took all these handful of kids that really, you know, were misfits and couldn't really do it. Third grade is, you don't know if you're really going to sing in third grade or not,
you don't know a whole lot about anything except for what your favorite cartoon is, you know?
So it did. It was an interesting kind of thing. And out of that also came competition for me. You know, so I did a lot of competitions, vocal competitions throughout junior high and high school. It was competitive and it was fun. And so yeah, it was good. It did definitely light me up, and I think a lot of it was that energy mixed, the excitement energy mixed with fear. You know, that's always a really fine line. And they can kind of commingle. Being on stage, so that kind of catapulted that. It was a safe place in a choir because you have people around you, obviously. But then I started doing it on my own with the vocal training I had, and then I did all the competitions with solo stuff. And then I actually did, there's a baseball farm team for the Cincinnati Reds in Billings.
Oh, cool.
So I did the national anthem there a lot in high school. So I was able to kind of get out of my shell.
Yeah. All right, one more question, and then we'll kind of move on to the college years. But you know, you kind of said that you were like a misfit, and you didn't, like, it was just kind of like a tough time for you, like, you know, middle school, high school. What was the reason or the cause behind that, do you think?
My personality just didn't really fit in with the area. You know, my mom used to always say, I think, you know, by your freshman year of high school, I knew you were not going to stay here. I wanted to see the world. There was a bigger life out there for me. I was really excited to just go and do what, I didn't know what that was, but, you know, really find out about life and about me and about other cultures and other things, and not be so tied into a smaller town in Montana.
Okay.
So I think really it just was me wanting to explore and really being artsy, where that culture, there is a good art community in Billings area, but I needed to expand that quite a bit.
Yeah, I grew up in Iowa. I grew up in a small town, and you know, there can, I mean, there's a lot of great aspects of growing up, kind of like in, you know, the Iowas, the South Dakotas, the Montanas, and places like that. But there's also can be a lot of you know, limited beliefs, limited thinking, a lot of just traditions, and you know, I'm a super, kind of like I mentioned before I turned on the mic with you, Amy, like I'm super free spirited, and I'm like, I don't like to be tied down. I don't like all the kind of that rigidity of kind of like the good old Midwest. So I could definitely see where, like, you know, you're just like, man, I gotta, you know, I'm a butterfly, and I just gotta go, you know, I gotta get out of the cocoon and fly away, so to speak. So, all right. So I think you alluded to earlier, or you mentioned earlier, that you went to college in Minnesota. So where did you go to college, and then kind of what were those years like?
I went to college at Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Okay.
It's primarily an art school.
Yep.
And it was phenomenal. I am not a grades person, so I am a good C average student.
There you go.
And it was a private college, and you know, you obviously had to apply and get in, and I got in on a music scholarship.
Okay, cool.
But obviously not on grades.
Right,
so
right.
I was monitored on that. When I did get in, my mom said, "You're not going, because you will fail, you will flunk out, and you will come home." She was like, "You're flat out not going." So my stubbornness was like, well, I am. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, but I'm going.
Yep.
So then all four parents, you know, had a heart-to-heart, and then it ended up where, obviously, that's where I went to school. But it was really one of the best experiences of my life. And I didn't go there for the degree. I went there for the music experience.
Yeah.
I am huge on experiences with life, and that's all I wanted was the experience. I knew I was going to be a psychology major.
Okay.
I knew that about my junior in high school. I didn't care where I got that from, but I did want the music experience. And so going out there was just an enlightened experience for me. You know, I was pretty much at the top in music, if you will, in high school, and I got there, and boy, was I not.
Right,
you know, there was just some unbelievable talent that now have gone on to, you know, do things in Hollywood and Carnegie Hall and just all these amazing, beautiful things, along with a handful of music teachers, thanks to them out there.
For sure.
So it was a really good experience. And my freshman year, you know, was totally a game changer on community and how it was seen in school. So, you know, in high school, it was like, I'm not in the popular crowd. I'm in music, I'm a dork, I'm whatever that is. It sucked. And then I go to college, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, people like me? Like, what's happening here? And there was a football team, but it was kind of an afterthought. Yeah. So it was this flipped world where it was like sports wasn't dominant, and if you weren't in sports, you weren't cool. And now it was like, if you weren't in music, you weren't cool. So we lived on this little, I mean, I guess all of us were on this like dorky island for the rest of the world. But
that's cool.
It really just opened my eyes on all sorts of walks of life and people and talent and where that could go. And it was an amazing experience.
So was there maybe a professor or an adult during those college years that you look at and you're very thankful for their mentorship and what they poured into your life?
You know, I think not one per se, but I think in experiences there was. There was my freshman, sophomore year, we had a director that was just beyond amazing with us. And we did have to audition to those choirs. Okay. Even though we got into the school, you still had to audition to be in those. So that was really cool. My first experience, my sophomore year of college, going to the East Coast, so the little chick from Montana. Yeah. We got invited to sing at Carnegie Hall. Concordia did. And so my first ever time landing in New York, being in Manhattan, I was on Concordia, I was in Carnegie Hall on stage. And I was 19.
Right, yeah.
I think things like that really positioned where I was going to go in life. Like, if I can do that, and if I can have those experiences, I want more of that. And of course, I fell in love with Manhattan and the arts there and everything. So, you know, now it's like this, I have to go back and see Broadway like once a year, get my fix. But it really was just an overall experience with the school itself. And honestly, I think more so it was my roommates and closest friends. I struggled with depression. When I got there, I didn't realize I had it in high school, just because you're kind of in this mundane world and you're doing the things and you're safe at home. I was 10 hours one way away from home, on my own, no siblings to call, nothing like that, right? And I think that really was the first time I was like, oh, this is a lot. And it was hard for me to get out of bed. It was hard for me to do a lot of things. And then I realized, growing up and, you know, being an adult, is that my dad had it really bad. And so it's genetic. So trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this and how am I going to really function through this? How am I going to fight my way out of it? I was at my lowest in my junior, senior year of college. And we lived in a little blue house. Shout out to the little blue house. And the girls there are some of my dearest friends. We just had our 20th reunion, and it was beautiful to see them. But they literally would help me out of bed some days and, you know, get me going. And, okay, you got to do this. You got to show up. I also worked 30 hours a week through college, you know, because we didn't have any money. So it was a really interesting learning curve for me. And I could have chosen... It could have gone easily either way, right? It could have been like, okay, maybe I limp along and finish college and go home, you know, and I can't do that. I can't do the big world. Or I fight through it and figure out, okay, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And is this going to dictate how I do this? So it really did transpire and kind of spin off of where I am now, along with the fact that my dad got ill my senior year of college, and then passed away my senior year of college. So, a month before I graduated college, he passed away. So that was, you know, I was definitely like, I'm done. I'm done with school. Like, I need to get home. But you know, at 21 years old, that was pretty life-changing.
For sure. So, I want to touch on the depression a little bit. So, like, you know, because, like, I mean, I went away to college and stuff, and, you know, you kind of have, like, I guess for me, it was like a fresh start, and I was away from the parents and all that. But I think but at some point, like I had kind of like some of that homesickness where it's like, dang, like, Mom did my laundry for me, Mom cooked the food for me, Mom and Dad paid the bills for me. Like, I had it really good. And then, you know, you have that kind of some of that homesickness and different things like that. So, What was kind of like the difference between just having some of that homesickness and being away from home for the first time and not having like the siblings or the parents close, you know, compared to like actually having the depression? How do you kind of decipher the two, and just explain a little bit, because I know, like, you know, there's a lot more awareness being brought to anxiety, depression, mental health, which I appreciate that because I have my own struggles with different things. But, you know, how do you kind of decipher between just the typical normal homesickness and the depression, and then just kind of maybe share with the listeners just kind of what some of that depression caused for you? I know you already mentioned, like, you know, you couldn't get out of bed, but just what were some of those thoughts? What were you really kind of feeling and dealing with, like, emotionally?
Yeah. I think, you know, I never had suicidal thoughts, but I definitely had, I am not good enough thoughts. I'm not good enough for anything. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not good enough to sit in class. I'm not good enough to get up to go to class. And those were all anxiety-filled. So I was constantly revved up, if you will. So my heart would race all the time. I was in this nervous state of energy, not knowing really how to handle anything. And I think a lot of that came from growing up the way I did, right? So I think that part of it is PTSD with the surgeries and the heart defect, and not really acknowledging that and all those things that kind of go along with it that we know now. Growing up, but then also just being kind of completely catapulted into a different world with all these people I don't know, being shy still, you know, I was still kind of in that shy state. I can still be there sometimes, but I know how to get around it now. But really just being not really insecure, not secure with who I was, not knowing who I was,
right?
But being very aware of that. So I think a lot of times when we're, I don't know, 16 to 25, if you don't care.
Yeah,
right? It's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Let's go grab a drink, or let's go, but I had this like, oh my God, I'm not good enough, or what I'm wearing isn't awesome enough, or what, like just all these different things constantly. And watching my dad not be able to really function. He was one of the best dads ever, and he had a massive influence on a lot of the friends I grew up with. But he had his struggles with it, and so he couldn't hold down a job, and he couldn't do those things. And my stepmom was the main supporter of that house and of me, and so I took those things into account when I really was going downhill, and I was seeing a counselor, and I was on meds, really just trying to get a handle on how to get out of the darkness. For me, and everyone is different, but for me it was I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to just lay down. I never had any energy. I wanted to shut all the blinds. I wanted it to be dark. I wanted life to be dark. I just wanted to close it down. And so trying to get out of that was really, I had to put in the work. I really had to put in the work. And my pivotal moment was sitting in a counselor's office saying, I'm not going to go down the path my dad did. I'm not, because there is a point, I think, when you just get down too low, it is so hard to get out of that hole.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's like, I got to stop now and figure out how to get out of this. And then I have to teach myself to really recognize when I'm slipping down, right? And I don't think that depression is you have it once and then it's gone.
Right,
I think it's something that is a lifelong journey for people. And so it's just a matter of managing it like we manage anything else.
Yeah.
Health-wise, of how do I take care of myself? How do I do this day to day? And I'm highly aware of that. If I'm too exhausted or I'm stretching myself too thin, I will stop. Because I can't. The first thing that has to be okay is me. Right. Versus anything else.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So, yeah.
Great. All right. So let's move on to and so I'm assuming you graduated with your psychology degree and things like that. So after college, what did those first few years look like for you, Amy?
Well, after college, I went right back home.
Okay.
But that was because my dad passed, and I wanted to make sure that my stepmom was okay, and things were okay.
For sure.
And small town, those mid states, you kind of can fall into this trap of never being able to leave and all of that. And so when I went back, I was like, okay, don't fall into that. And I had no idea what I was going to do with psychology. I knew I liked it. I knew I did not want to counsel. So that was out. So, I can't tell you how many times my mom asked me, so what are you doing with this? Like, where are you going? How are you going to find a job? So I worked a lot of just random jobs, serving, waitress, babysitting here and there, which was not my favorite thing to do. Just all those types of little things just to make ends meet, right?
Yep.
And then about a year after I was home, I was like, okay, I'm done. I got to go. And so it was either the West Coast or Colorado, and Colorado was a choice of the ex-boyfriend that I had at the time. And so I was like, great, let's go. Okay. So picked up and just moved, honestly. Lived in a dump little house in Fort Collins, and it was great. And brought the cats down. I'm a big animal lover and cat lover, so the cats were there. And kind of limped along in Colorado when I got here, too. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. When I was in college, I did work, volunteer for a sexual assault agency that was a nonprofit. I'm a big nonprofit component. Grew up helping in nonprofits and doing nonprofit work. Yeah. So I was like, okay, maybe that's the angle I need to go. So I did. I had 3 jobs at the time. So I was serving part-time, I was a teller part-time at a bank, and then I was doing the volunteer coordinating at Sexual Assault Victims Advocate in Fort Collins, which if anybody has been in nonprofit, and good for you if you're still in it, you know that it takes a lot more than 40 hours a week, and it definitely takes more than 20, right? And it doesn't really pay. So I was, limping along with all those things. I was like, all right, this is just too much. So I went into a full-time job of just being an office assistant person. Hated that. Absolutely hated that. I think I was making $13 an hour, something like that.
Yeah.
But, that was big time.
For sure.
I don't know, I was pushing, 26 at the time, but I was still limping along, right? Got laid off of there because the company was local and was not doing well. Yep. And I was so excited to be able to just take a hot minute and be like, what the hell am I doing?
Right.
Where do I need to go? How do I need to do this? And that was the first time that I ever, instead of just looking for a job or how can I fit in here, putting that peg in, stepping back and really analyzing the company itself, not the job. And I recommend it to anybody. If you're looking at something, you need to make sure that company fits for you, not necessarily the job that's offered. Because unless you want to stay at that job until you're retired, you're not, you're going to be moving within that company, or that would probably be the long-term goal. So you want to make sure that company is a strong company. And I found one in Loveland, and I was hired for inside sales. I did not know what that was at the time. Just needed a job. It had good insurance because, my mom drilled into me, since I have a heart condition, you need insurance. So I was excited about that. And the rest is history. It's like the very first month I was cold calling. I did 30 cold calls a day, which is low now, but it seemed like a lot then. And I fell in love with sales. Absolutely fell in love with sales. Okay. And it fits my psychology. I did that for about 10 months, and then they promoted me to outside sales, and so I had 8 states that I covered for 15 years doing corporate selling, and absolutely loved it.
Okay, so before we take a full dive into sales and where you're at kind of currently, I wanna just touch on kind of like where you were at personally in those years of kind of like trying to figure out, you're just working a bunch of different jobs, right? You're just paying the bills, you're trying to figure things out. Where were you at kind of like in regards to just kind of like mentally and personally when you were in those jobs? Were you just kind of like finding yourself just kind of like empty inside? Were you really just searching to figure out kind of like what your why was, what your purpose was? Just where were you at like in a mental state during some of those bouncing around years?
Honestly, I think that the being in the Fort Collins area helped me a lot.
Okay.
The area that I live in has to be specific for me. That is something I learned massively in Montana. Yeah. And then I love Minnesota, but man, it's cold. And I still have a lot of really good friends out there. Yeah. And people, the clients that I used to, work with, and I love all of them dearly. And the people out there are amazing. But man, the weather sucks. Yeah, I can't live here. Yep. So, when I got to Colorado, I was like, oh, this is kind of my jam, like it's a little granola, a little earthy vibe, right?
I like that. That's good.
I have that side of me, and that fit really well. The culture was awesome. The people were great. So I loved, if I have that, then I'm full. Okay, right? Cool. So it's like, okay, I have that, now what? So now what do I do? Where do I go with whatever else I need to create? And I looked every single day. That was back in newspaper days. I looked every single day in the newspaper, anything that was hiring, those types of things. But I think really I was in that spinning the wheels mode, where it's like, well, you have to pay the rent, right? And you have to fill gas, and you have to find quarters if you want a coffee that day. And I was in that mindset. I was like, this is the day today. And really, what set it apart was when I was able to have that breath, take a breath. Which I think is so important. We all have things going on in our life, whether it's kids, family, marriage, people dying, anything that's going on in our life that makes us get on this hamster wheel. And the more we can break that cycle, the more we will grow. And I think that was my biggest aha moment within looking back on that and realizing, okay, I need to just take this minute and really figure out the companies I want to work for, what do I want to be doing, how do I want to grow that. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's move into kind of like sales and just kind of like, where you're at currently and things like that. So you said you started working for this company, sales, making 30 cold calls a day and things that sounds like kind of accelerated pretty quickly for you professionally. So just touch on kind of like the beginning
part of like, you know, sales? So like, you know, when you're doing the cold call, did it take you a little bit to kind of like work through like doing the cold calls? Because, you know, let's be honest, like a lot of people that are probably listening to this, I do cold calls, I do sales for personal training and stuff, right? Just because I'm a trainer and you got to get clients, you got to retain clients. But a lot of people don't like to, you know, they don't like sales. Sales has a bad kind of connotation. It's getting better, right? I believe in our culture, but still sales is something where it's like you do that if you need to pay the bills, if you actually are kind of at the end of whatever you were trying to figure out in your life to pay the bills. So initially, Amy, did it take you some time to kind of like, you know, enjoy the cold calls and kind of get in the rhythm of things, so to speak, or did you really just find yourself almost natural at doing kind of those beginning sales?
I will say this on a side note. If there's anyone out there that loves to just pick up the phone with no background on what they're going to say or how they're going to say it, and they're totally confident on that, blind, love to meet you. Because I don't think anyone really truly has that, right? I think there's always some sort of anxiety of just picking up the phone.
For sure.
That's the hardest part of it. It's like, all right, here I go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I'll just get coffee first. I just need to have a little break first. You know, trying to get that ego up enough to be like, I got this, right? So I think that's the hardest part of it. And yeah, I had that every single day. But I also needed a job. Right. And so I was like, well, I got to figure out how to do this. And what came natural to me was then the communication. So I went back again to the psychology side of like, if I can figure out what they need, then I can help them. So I think, and we can touch on this later if you want to, but you hit it on the head when you said sales kind of has this bad connotation. Because really it's not sales. Everyone sells every single day. You open the door for someone and they walk through it and they say thank you. You just did some sort of sales interaction, right? So all it is connecting and communication. And so if we can figure out how to communicate with them, so not communicate or pitch you, but what's going on with them and how to help them, then it's easy and it's exciting. And it's like, ooh, I'm giving back and I'm doing something to help this person succeed or this company succeed. So that's really was what kind of put that into that motion for me of like, okay, if I can just switch my mindset into I'm not dialing for dollars and I'm not the used car salesman on the other line, right? I'm here as a vendor to help you succeed. It changes your mindset. It changes how you pitch it. Right.
Now, how did you come to that realization? Was that something that you just kind of discovered through kind of like your psychology, studying, or was there like a book? Was there some mentor? Was there somebody that kind of influenced that or not?
Oh, I think it was just a lot of fails.
Oh, okay.
Right? It was a lot of picking it up and somebody hanging up on you or someone saying immediately, I'm not interested. You know, how do you get around those, right? You have to learn how to get around those. For sure. So it was like, well, nobody's interested in what I'm pitching, right? They all know where I'm calling from. They all know what I'm selling. There's a company down the street selling the same exact friggin' thing. So what the hell am I selling, right? So it's like, okay, I got to get in the door and I got to figure that out. So how do I do that? And I think just by falling forward constantly, you know, then it came to me. Okay, well, let's just try this. If that didn't work, try something else. Pivot a little bit, right? Pivot is one of the best words on the planet. You know, you can constantly keep pivoting to see what works really well for you, what doesn't. What sets you on fire, right? What gets you energized because the other person on the other line or across from you can see that and picks up that energy. Right. So just trying to, wade through it and not getting down on yourself because that's the other hardest part, sure. Right? It's like, I suck at this. Yeah. Like, dang, this is not easy. And sales is not easy. But if you can acknowledge that and acknowledge that you're going to have constant fails and that's okay, because all you're doing is failing forward, then go for it.
Right. Okay, cool. So let's I want to just talk about, kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of sales and communicating and things like that. So you said you kind of learned that it's about connecting and communicating with people as opposed to just like, hey, I'm calling this person and try to sell them something so I can make more money, right? So how do you how does somebody, like, just like speaking to the listeners, right? Somebody that's like maybe in my position, they're a personal trainer and they have to sell and it's not really their favorite thing to do, but they have to do it to make money, all that. Or maybe as a used car salesman, whatever. Like you said, all of us are in sales, whether we realize it or not. But how does somebody kind of formulate that connecting and communicating with other human beings, and do it like in a, maybe like a couth way, a professional way, a way that's not quote unquote salesy and like pitchy?
Yeah. So the first experience I really had with this, I just want to tell a little story around
this.
Like,
please, absolutely.
Inside sales is easy because if they ask you a question, you can say hold please and look it up, right?
Okay.
Face to face is a lot harder because they're going to ask you questions on the dime, and if you don't know them, and I didn't know them, when I got kind of out into the outside world, I realized that I had no freaking clue what the hell my product was. I was learning on the fly with all those questions, and you need to know your product, obviously, right? And you need to know the nuts and bolts and how that's going to play with your client and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, when you walk in there, you have 20 seconds to make an impression with that person, and it is not your product that is making that impression. And they subconsciously decide within those 20 seconds if they like you, if they somewhat trust you, and if they're going to do business with you, right? So I did not know all that then. But when I started doing outside sales, one of my pivotal moments was about a year in. This was a client that ended up being a client of mine for life, and they're amazing. But, I was in this boardroom, and I felt fancy because I was still a little young. I was like, maybe 29.
Yeah.
Was in a suit, and I have to say, just I know I still love boardrooms and suits. It's one of my things. I don't know.
Love it.
It makes you feel powerful, right?
Yeah,
it makes you feel like you can own the room. But I was watching the people kind of in the room, and the decision maker, and I will say also this, that there's always a second decision maker, right, that influences the person that signs. So you want to make sure that you're watching all of those key people. Really were not impressed. I pitched it perfect. I pitched the product perfect. I pitched why they should work with us. We have the best customer service, just like every other company. All those things. And finally, he said to me, so why would I change all of the passwords for my company, upheaval everything, just to save, a little bit of transaction? And that was my pivotal moment of, do I be real, or do I still in that sales cycle, right? Like, do I stay on that path? Because I didn't have him. I wasn't going to close him on the sales path. So I was like, well, I'll just be real with you. And so I just said, you wouldn't. You would not do that. You would not sign up with me or the company to save whatever it would be, a click fee, right? But the reason why you would sign up with me is because of me. You have me behind you. And I get paid by my company, but I work for you. And I will strategically work for you to figure out how my products and services best fit to uplevel your business, right? That's sales. So it's not pitching the product. It's like, how can I be on your team? How can I be on your team? Really, that's sales. So if you can, when you're walking into a room, or you're face-to-face with someone for the first time, or you're calling and you're trying to pitch something, my best advice is to strip away the product. This is hard to do in the beginning. But if you can get away from the product and remember why you're there. So like when I do speaking engagements or trainings or things like that, I will take a minute before I come in and remember who I am. So I am someone that's from Montana, that got out of that, has seen awesome parts of the world, right? Who's influenced and wants to be inspired, likes to be inspired, likes to connect and help people and figure out how I can do that and up-level their game, those types of things. If you can tap into you and what makes you passionate, and just keep a mental note of that and check in with yourself, you're going to be much more present, much more real. You're not going to be that used car salesman, right? Not that pitchy person. And then you'll be able to connect with them.
That's good. All right, so I want to talk about kind of like body language, right? I want to talk about the actual words that you're using and the words that are coming out of your mouth. I want to talk about energy, because like you've already talked about it. It's like people are gonna see you, they're gonna purchase you, they're gonna buy you, you know, over the product. The product is kind of like secondary, right? If you really understand sales and just how life is. So and like, you know, I introduce you as like a professional image consultant. So I just kind of want you to just take this however you want, Amy, but I really just want you to kind of just you know, just expound on the importance, not only like in the sense of like the world of sales, but just life in general. When you're trying to, you know, maybe meet a guy to date or a girl to date, or you're just, you know, trying to be the best version of yourself, how important is it, you know, to carry yourself a certain way? How important is it to be conscious of the words that you're speaking to yourself, you're putting out in the world, and how important is it in regards to kind of like that image? So yes, the sales part, if you want to touch on that, but then also just in life in general, to really build that momentum and confidence for yourself and those around you.
Yeah. So we can put the sales side kind of over to the side right now, because anything that you do within connection and communication and presence and how you show up will go across all lines, right? It goes across your relationships, your networking, your potential clients, you know, all those things, right? Your home life, all of those things, how you show up. I think in today's age, what's really unique about it is that we don't know how to communicate face-to-face anymore. Right. We really have this challenge because we're all on our phones. We're connected to our phone, and even if we're not on it, it's very close by us.
For sure,
right? Yeah. So one of the things that I always talk about is if you are meeting with someone and you have a table, your phone cannot be on that table because it's still saying this is more important to me than you, right? So you need to put that away. Though just little things like that really are telling to the other person. And if we sit back and we think about, because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit on thinking around how other people show up. If you start thinking about, if I was meeting with someone today, how would I want them to show up? How would I want them to show up to where I would respond well? Where I would be encouraged by them or want to sign up with them on their product or whatever they're doing.
For sure.
Or be a friend of theirs or date them, right? Like, how would I want them to show up? Which then tells you how you need to show up, right? So you probably do need to put your phone away. You need to be present. You need to do those things. But I think we also get in our head of, because we're a little bit socially awkward as a society now, I think we get in our head of, well, I don't know if they'll like me, right? Or I don't know what to do with myself, or I don't know. And so it's back to that we're projecting out instead of inward and checking in with ourselves, really, and making sure that we are present and truly aware of who we are. Because if we stay in that mode of who we are, and this is who I am and this is who I have to give, and if you love it, great. And if it's not your cup of tea, that's okay too. Instead of, okay, how do I need to mold into this arena of people, right? People will always respect you more if you stand on your own pedestal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, like...
Did I answer that?
Yeah, you did. I want to go deeper, though. I want to go deeper. So, like, let's talk about like just language, okay? Because like I'm very, like, I love words, and I know that the words that I speak to myself, the story that I tell myself, that's what's going to be manifested in my everyday life, right? So when let's say, you know, you're let's just say if you want to take it, it's like you're working with a group of people, but let's focus on, like, let's just say somebody like comes to you, Amy, you know, maybe they're you know, a high level business person, but they want to improve, you know, kind of their communication skills. They just want to become overall a better individual, and they hire you as like a personal coach or something like that. How are you going to communicate to them in regards to, like, just working with them in the words that they're speaking to themselves, and then the words that they're speaking maybe to their team, to their business, to their spouse, and things like that?
So I love that you said that you love words. I love words too.
Yeah.
I love quotes. I love all those things. I dive down. I get into a rabbit hole with those all the time.
For sure, yeah.
But I think, you know, honestly, in talking to people and doing that and working with companies and people one-to-one on consulting is, how do you see yourself now? How do you want to see yourself? How do you think people see you, right? So there's differences there of, okay, well, if I beat myself up, because we do that all day long, right? Or maybe this person sees me this way, or if my company sees me as just the owner and I'm never really present, but I'm this big entity, basically, that sits in the office, right?
Right.
And is that what you want, or do you want it to be more connective? So really going through those stages of, okay, how do you see yourself? How do others see you? Those types of things. And then writing those down, going through that whole thing, and then deciding, how do you want to be seen? I think that's really important. I don't think we do that enough. How do you want to be seen? How do you want yourself to be visible? Because that tends to then internalize how you manifest those things, right? So if you want to be seen as powerful and bold, then you have to make sure that you feel like you're powerful and bold,
For sure.
right? So then you're constantly telling yourself that. Anytime I'm doing anything, before I came here with you today, I was getting ready and in the bathroom, I have music on that pumps me up, and I'm looking at myself as I'm doing makeup as, you got the, and I say to myself, I'm sure, if anybody ever recorded it, that would not be a good thing, but I'm saying to myself in the mirror, you know, you got this. This is awesome. This is who you are. This is what you do. This is what you do well, right? So the more you do that, the more you do manifest that, and the more it comes through with people. So I think projecting kind of how you want to be seen in the world, and then truly what you're passionate about, and owning who you are, and then really acknowledging that and keeping that forward-facing will help you evolve that.
I love that. I love that question. How do you want to be seen? So that's great insight. I appreciate that.
How many of us walk around having absolutely no awareness of our body language ever? Yeah. Most of us, right? Like we prep deeply, and I know we're talking a little bit about words here and how we're manifesting that, but it also goes into that nonverbal stuff.
Absolutely.
Of how often do we prep for meetings like this today, right? You have a sheet, you're writing down, you got all that. We've prepped that. We prep for a big sales pitch meeting. We have all that. I would guess that 99.9% of the listeners have never prepped their nonverbal communication for a meeting. However, it's up to 92% of how we communicate. So why are we not doing that, right? So that's a huge component of how we show up and how we want the world to see us. Yet we're just wandering around in the grocery store a hot mess, right? Or, we have our earbuds in and we're totally, and that's okay some days. I'm not saying that,
of course,
we don't need to just shut down, but really we need to be we need to be a lot more aware of that.
Absolutely. So because that's like so huge to me. So like I was a public educator the last couple of years, and I was a physical education teacher. In the first year I was working with like elementary kids and things like that, and I already have a very intense, loud voice, and I know for some kids coming from certain situations that can right away that can be a trigger, right? You start crying and intimidation and all that. So like I really learned the importance as a school teacher in regards to, first of all, my body language. So if I've completely eliminated crossing my arms because that is like it's kind of like defensive. You can interpret that in a lot of negative ways, right? Like standing there with like hands on the hip, like you'll never see me with my hands on my hip. Just different things like that. I realized that because of some of my strong points in my life that can be very positive, like a loud voice and intense, that can, when you're working with kids and even certain adults, like that can be negative, right? That can cause some triggers and things like that. So through school teaching, I really realized the importance and the power of body language, and I eliminated certain ways of standing and things like that. And then I've really realized, again, working with kids, the importance of words that I say, the importance of tone and all of this different stuff, because all these kids are coming from different situations and different words, different ways of saying things that can trigger things. Now, you can kind of take that too far and get caught up in your own head, but I think it's really important. I want you to just continue to share a little bit in regards to your experience in sales and just in life, Amy, but just the importance of like being aware. I think awareness, self-awareness is important, but then also being aware of who are you talking to, who are you teaching, who are you pitching, who is surrounding you, and not changing, but just being aware that maybe these people in this situation, if you say it this way, or if you have your arms crossed, like it can be interpreted differently. So just talk about the importance of that self-awareness, being aware of your surroundings, who you're interacting with, and things like that.
Yeah, I love it. Awareness and audience. Those are the two things you just touched on, awareness and audience. If you can be aware of yourself and know your audience, you are ahead of the game about 90% of everybody else. And your awareness takes work. It takes constant work, right? To be very aware of how you're showing up. We all have certain things that we are a little bit inadequate with, right? Or things that are really powerful, but also can be our weakness. So I think there's twofold there, right? Like you were saying, you know, you have this loud voice and you're boisterous, but some kids might, you know, be nervous about that, those types of things.
For sure.
So in some instances it might be great, but in other instances you need to dial it down, right? So, and I knew that, and I know that still with what I do. If I walk into a room, I have to gauge my audience. So if I am too loud speaking, so, you know, my posture, all of that, all those types of things, that if I'm too loud and I'm owning the room too much, I know I need to dial it down a little bit. And I need to be not as large in the room, if you will, right? So I notice those things, but I notice it because I know I'm aware of me and I know my audience. So yeah, I think that really came into practice with me within sales, because I was constantly around people. I was constantly doing conferences, and I've always just sat back and watched. I'm a big watcher. Growing up, I was shy, but I would always know exactly what everyone was doing in the room. And I just, that's how I've always been. So if I watch the room and I can kind of analyze, if you will, loose term, the room of what they're doing, how they're interacting, how they're showing up, if they are crossing their arms, if they're somebody that's leaning totally back in their chair, which is a very pompous move, right? Those types of things. Like, oh, it's really interesting to kind of monitor that. And so I started taking that into consideration with my sales. So really knowing, okay, so this person has no care in the world of being here today. This person is the influencer of the buyer, so I need to tap into them and they need to love me. I always call them the gatekeeper. People in sales call them that a lot, right? So if you can get past the gatekeeper, you're golden, right? So it's like, that's where you got to start. You got to love on the person who's signing the document. So there's all these different levels of just, you know, how do you play in those spaces? And not, again, not being too loud and not too boisterous with all those different levels. So I think it's really important to really start tapping into, okay, even a simple change of, so the next time you're walking around and you walk into a place and you open the door for someone, right, or someone opens the door for you, let's say, think about what you normally do. What's your normal reaction to that? And change it. Those are tiny little things that you can start tweaking that have no bearing on your day-to-day. They have no bearing on your financial, with getting a client, those things like that. But being extremely aware of, how did I just react to that? How did I respond to that? So those are some practices that you can actually put into place of, okay, if they open the door to me, you say thank you and walk through. Instead, maybe say, thank you so much. How was your Tuesday going today? You don't know them at all. They might say F off, right? You never know.
You never know. That's
but it would be an interesting experience.
Yeah,
like, okay, well, that was odd, right? But just those types of, and then what it's going to create are experiences for you, which is fantastic, because then you can take those life experiences into the things that you're nervous about today. So into pitching a product, or into, you know, dialing for dollars, those types of things. You can take that into your world and use those a little bit more, right? So just changing the dialogue, changing the narrative.
I love that. All right, so kind of one more thing on sales, like specifically. And again, I love and this is something that I've learned, and you've brought it up, but it's like all day long we're constantly selling, right? But just I want to talk about closing, right? Because like, you know, you can have the pitch down, you can have, you know, the body language down and use the right words and all this different stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like you've got to close it. You've got to like get the person to sign, you know, give you the credit card or whatever. So from your personal experience, what are maybe like one or two tips? I don't want to call them tricks, but tips, or maybe just some ideas you could throw out there for people to kind of think about and chew on in regards to making that close in sales and also in life.
Yeah, so obviously it goes back to your audience again, right? You have to know your audience, you have to know what they're going to respond to. Mm-hmm. So I think the thing that's really lacking, especially just if we're talking in selling world or business world, is knowing that audience. So have you done your due diligence? When I work with people, one of the things I always ask is, so when you're calling someone to get an appointment or ask them if they want to sign up for something, do you know them? And a lot of times the response will be, yeah, their business was, formed this year. They're the CEO. They've been the CEO for 10 years. That, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. No. Do you know them? Right? Do you know that human? Right. It's not the business that you need to know. It's the human. It's the response that you need to know. Because what you're looking for, and at the end of the day, what is going to move that needle for you is a reaction and a response from them. So you have to figure out how to get them to respond instead of just, I need to meet with you, right? Or you need this product in your life, those types of things. So to really, when you're finally in there and you're closing, it again has to be about them. So make it about them and how that's going to make them succeed and how you're going to help them do that. If you want transition within the next 3 to 5 years, this is the plan that I see for you. And this is how I'm going to help you. And I'm going to help you because I'm not in the weeds with you. I can see the big picture because I'm out here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to call you on your stuff here, here, and here, right? Like, you need to give them a roadmap and a visual of how you're going to do that. I'm a big component of how. If you cannot come to the table with someone with a complete description of how on every step of the way, then they're not going to pick it up from you. Because everyone needs to know how you're going to get there, right? Same thing with if you listen to a podcast, just like we did, you outlined it beautifully right at the start, right? That's the how. Mm-hmm. This is how we're going to do this today. Yeah. Instead of, so this is who I am and this is who I have today and let's just dive right. Nobody knows what's going on. Yeah. Right? So you need that how. Present that how to them, and again, it has to be about them, not you. And that has, take away that product. This is how we're going to get this done for you. How are you going to succeed?
Beautiful. I love that. All right, so I want to ask you, Amy, what have been some limiting beliefs as you've just walking through life and maybe the professional side of things have brought some limiting beliefs up. Maybe it's the personal side, but just as you've walked through life, what have been, let's just say, your biggest limiting belief that you've really had to break through over the years?
That I'm good enough to do it.
Okay.
I think that would be, I know that's broad, but that has come into play a lot in my life. Am I good enough to finish college? Am I good enough to be in corporate sales? Am I good enough to play with the big boys? Am I good enough to own my own company? Am I strong enough to do that? And I think there have been pivotal moments that have kept me going to okay, what do I have to lose on this? This company that I have now, my pivotal moment was I really needed to get out of corporate sales in a way just because I was on a plane all the time, I was exhausted, and I was bored. I loved my clients, but I wasn't doing anything new. And honestly, the companies, I had worked with a few companies at the time doing the same thing. The last company I had, had me help with their trainings and things like that. And at the time, I was totally annoyed because I was not management, right? And I couldn't lift up to management because a lot of times when you're in sales and you're doing really well for the company, they don't want you going anywhere, right? Right. So it's like, well, what the hell do I do now? But looking back on that, it really, that pivotal moment gave me the get up, if you will, to say, okay, so if you just allowed me to do that here, why can't I just do that on my own, right? And so I offboarded from corporate selling. I was in the mortgage industry, so I got my loan officer's license. I still hold my license, but I did that fully for kind of a hot minute. And again, one of the things I was doing, because I was boots on the ground again in sales, right? 101, got to network. Yeah. So I started networking again and found that to me, there was not really any great networking companies or places around in the Denver metro area. So I just started my own, not knowing, I was like, I'm just annoyed. I need professional polish. I was used to being in a suit and Corporateville and all of that. And I was like, we got to up the game here a little bit.
For sure.
People. Like, I love the word Granolaville in Denver, but got to just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And people responded. So now, another company that I have is a networking company that does a networking event every month, and we have 40 to 70 people consistently every single month of that.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see that and to give that back and to be like, this is what we can do, right? But it's those pivotal moments. My other one was that when I started doing loan officer stuff, and then that company came back to me and said, you need to just do our business development because you're too strong in that, which is awesome because the loan officer stuff wasn't my personality. And then my mom got sick in 2018. So that was just, last year was my first year back fully. And I was kind of limping along, dead in the water. And I was living full-time in Arizona, but coming back once a month to do the networking events.
Okay.
And maybe 10 people were aware that that was actually going on at the time. And then I'd fly back down to Arizona, take care of my mom. And then she passed that December. That was 6 months that I did that. But I was really, that was my pivotal moment of, I'm really dead in the water here. Like, what am I doing? What am I going to do? What is my next turn? What is my next spot to go to? And how do I do that? And how do I create that? And will I fail? Right? So it's like, so back to that, like, am I good enough to do that? Can I really do that? And I'm sitting in a spot away from my comfort zone, right? So, like, I love my space, and I have to be secure with where I live, and Arizona was not it.
Yeah.
And so I was out of my element there. I was uncomfortable there the entire time I was there, along with the fact that all these personal things were going on, too. But then, like, okay, so how do I create this and have the energy I need to create that in a space that's not creative, right? And that's really challenging. So I think that my lifeline was this networking event. And ironically, keeping that going, I had no idea at the time why I was doing that, except that it kept me sane a little bit, in coming back here and doing those things. But my company would not have launched as strongly as it did without that event. And people knowing what was coming and what was going and knew who I was, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the name of your company?
Sales and Presence.
Okay, cool. And then the networking group that you continue to refer to is called Unique Networking? Okay, perfect. I just want the listeners to be able to kind of know the specifics of names. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about, just not this thing that this limiting belief that you have to continue to work through of not feeling like worthy enough or good enough. So when you start experiencing the anxiety of that, like, am I good enough? Can I make it with the big boys, like you kind of said earlier, things like that, all this internal turmoil. What do you do, Amy, to just, work through that or break through that limiting belief? Like, how do you, as a grown woman, as an entrepreneur, as, successful sales, all this stuff that you've accomplished and achieved, as somebody that's listening to this, I'm struggling with, like, am I worthy enough and things like this. I'm really relating to what Amy's saying right now, but I just don't know how to, like, work through it. How do you personally work through it and break through that? What's one thing that you succeeded at today? Okay. What is one thing that you did well? Some days it's just getting out of bed. Right. Honestly. And that's something that, I just had to recognize, and I still recognize and work through and will work through my entire life. But it's like sometimes you have to step back and say, what did I do good today? What did I accomplish today that was that a post that got responses? Was that I actually got up the nerve to reach out to one person that I was nervous to reach out to, right? It might not be something that pays your bills today, right? But it's moving the needle. Okay. Do I need a self-care day, right? I think we don't take those into consideration enough. We go. And if I don't stop, then I am not efficient for anybody, including myself and especially my clients, right? So checking in with, okay, so maybe somebody didn't call me back, or I'm feeling not awesome about what I can do today. I can't think today. I don't know about you, but there are days where I'm like, God, I really don't have, like, any creative energy at all today. Like, my face kind of stuff. Like, I just feel like I'm not in that rhythm, right? Just taking a step back and being like, okay, but what have I succeeded from this point on, right? Like, so we all do the reflection thing kind of in November, December, throughout the year, right? Like, what was our wins this year and those types of things. So my challenge to all of you then would be looking at those more frequently,
right? And if you're really struggling, that's a day-to-day thing. It could be a weekly thing, and then you can move it to monthly, right? I would not go beyond monthly. Quarterly is pushing it a little too far. I think you need to remind yourself of how awesome you are, right? And the things that you have accomplished in the week. There are a lot of people out there who have families and things that are going on, and it's like you just go, go, go. You have to have your kids here. You do this, right? You need to make dinner. You need to work out. You need all these things. And then it's like Sunday gets there, and you're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I feel like I didn't do anything this week. You know, I'm kind of just going through the motions. Stop and think of what you actually did.
I like that.
You know, like what were your wins this week? Because we all have them. We have things that are not awesome wins too, and you can recognize those and learn from them because you're constantly falling forward. But really take that and say, okay, what did I do awesome today? That helps.
Cool. So I on your Facebook, it said you're a vegetarian and runner. So just to incorporate a little bit of like health and fitness into our conversation, because you just got done, talking about checking in with yourself, right? And the importance of self-care. And I'm like a huge proponent of like, I can't fill up anybody else's cup if my cup isn't full. And I had to go through some stages when I was in my 20s, just running around like a wild man, trying to do this and that for other people. And you get burned out and you get unhealthy, and it's just you implode, you explode, however you want to word it. So just touch on why you've chosen to be a vegetarian, and then also just talk about running and how that is kind of like a part of your life and self-care.
Yeah. I think before I go into that, I just want to say too that we all are on a spectrum. So some people can go and just be totally fine, and they can give, and that cup never seems to run out. I don't know many people that are truly like that. But then a lot of us are kind of in that middle ground on a spectrum to where we do need to really fill that up. So there are certain things to really just take note of and be aware of with yourself of what exhausts you. So when I have like consulting time, or if I have my networking group once a month, I don't plan anything else around that because that exhausts me. Perfect. Because I tend to run high on the spectrum, right? So like those things take a lot of energy for me, and I know that. So being aware of that helps. Just a random thought process.
I love it. No, that's beautiful.
Vegetarian. So I grew up in Montana, which means I grew up on meat.
So good meat though too, right?
Yeah,
good beef and you don't know.
I grew up on a lot of fast food.
Okay. McDonald's? Did you get the kids meal or what?
No, I was a Wendy's.
Wendy's. My dad's a Wendy's fan. I'm like, dude, does anybody I can't even believe Wendy's is still around.
I know, but their fries are the best. Wendy's fries.
I don't know. I mean, the Frosties are okay, but I don't know. I like the kids' meals. That's what I like. Chicken nuggets.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Real meat.
Chicken?
Real meat,
like,
right?
Oh, yeah, that's
real
totally
meat,
chicken.
right?
Yeah. No, actually the reason why was because I am a huge bleeding heart when it comes to animals, anything animals. Always have been. But it really kind of hit home when I started traveling back and forth. And so when I went from Montana to Minnesota, it was a 10-hour drive one way, all the way through 5 hours of Montana, another 5 hours through North Dakota, which is all farmland.
That's boring.
Oh, it's hell. It's
like you driving from Iowa to Colorado through Nebraska.
Horrible. Yeah,
it's
horrible.
Dang, dude.
It's horrible. It's
I need a really good podcast.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I fly back home now. I refuse to drive.
Right, I'm with you.
I'm done with driving long distance. But, it was a lot of cow land, farmland, all those things. And my senior year, for whatever reason, I finally was like, I wonder if I could just not eat red meat for like a week, right? And I totally thought I was going to vomit. I had no self-confidence at all that was going to stick. And it stuck immediately. It was like, oh. So it was this learning process of, I don't actually really like the meat, and this is the reason why I liked Wendy's, was because the meat was so thin, and all you could taste was the condiments.
Oh, okay.
And I really love condiments.
Ketchup or mustard or what? All of them?
Well, all the above, but my husband will tell you that we have to have 5 ketchups in the house. Okay. And anytime we go out to eat, the first thing he does is can you please bring us a ton of ketchup?
Yeah. When you ever been at a fast food restaurant, do you ever take the top of the top that you put on for your pop or whatever and just use that for the ketchup? Have you done that? Yeah. That's really good. That's really good.
Everything has to be totally done.
There you go.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, that was kind of easy, you know? And I didn't know how to cook or anything at the time, so it was like a lot of pasta, a lot of carbs.
Yep.
You're in college, who cares,
right?
Right,
right, yeah.
And that probably helps with the drinking. But, you know, so that's where it started. And then that kind of stuck. And I never was really a big white meat person, chicken or turkey or anything like that. So that kind of went away immediately. And then just because of lack of knowledge, I kind of stuck with fish a little bit, but I had never liked fish, so it was like once a week I'd gag it down and call it good. But then really started getting educated on animals and animal process and how we do that just as a country within that. And it really it did not stem from health, because a first thing people say was, oh yeah, you probably did that because you have a heart condition.
Right.
And no, that is not the reason why I did that at all.
Yeah,
it actually was never even a thought.
Interesting.
It was just because I had this bleeding heart for animals. And so the more education I got around mass production and those types of things, I was like, right, this is something I cannot do. So it's been 20 plus years now that I've been full vegetarian. I will do a little bit of dairy stuff if we're out, just because it's a little bit challenging. But at home, I'm 100% vegan. Vegan. And love it, actually. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun challenge.
Yeah, and I think too, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, kind of like the whole what you were talking about earlier, like when you moved to Fort Collins, and for you to kind of be like who you want to be, you've got to be around the people and kind of the right vibe and environment. So I think Colorado probably the whole state kind of fits like your environment, right?
Yeah. And even when I moved to Denver, I was like, yep, still good. We're good. And Minnesota has that vibe too. Minnesota's very similar to Colorado. So my roommates and everything, like, it fit right in.
Yeah,
with all of that. So
awesome.
I think and then going down that learning path of, okay, how can I do this for animals' sake, but also how can I do this, you know, it's really eye-opening of what certain foods and processes of foods does.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So that's just a real eye-opener. And then, honestly, too, now, going into, like, I'm, you know, young 40s now, of like, okay, how do I stay healthy? And how do I, you know, keep myself healthy? And if I am exhausted, which we all are,
for sure,
you know, on go, and how to create, and how to make this, and how to raise kids, and how to do all this kind of stuff, I have to be sure that I'm healthy, too.
Absolutely.
And if I'm stopping somewhere fast food that's a gut bomb, I'm just going to want to go to sleep. I'm not going to want to deal with anybody. I'm going to feel kind of gross, you know. So those are things, too, that I'm highly aware of. Yeah.
And then just touch on running, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So running came...
Because you said because of your heart condition when you're younger, like PE, you didn't like that. So so how did that kind of come to fruition?
I never liked doing any sort of athletic anything, really. It came because, you know, for my first marriage, I was like, well, I should probably look good in a dress. Really, that was the whole thing. So I hired a personal trainer who I just absolutely adore. We're still friends up in Fort Collins. Started working out slowly with him. He introduced, you know, weight training and things like that I had no idea. I'd never done in my life. And then it just stuck. It kind of really just stuck. And then he was a runner and is a runner. And so I was like, well, maybe I can try on treadmill stuff. And I would do a minute at a time, very slow. I think when I first started, and the first 5K that I ever did was like a 12 or so minute mile. So maybe like fast walking. Jogging, something like that. But, you know, I did it. And that was a huge accomplishment for me. And then finding out that I needed surgery, because anybody with a heart condition kind of knows that it's something that you live with day to day, and it's something you're highly aware of, but it's not something that you want to focus on day to day.
Right.
But then when it does come back up and things are needing to be addressed, it seems to be where the bottom just falls out. So I was fine until kind of 34-ish age, and within 2 months I was in the hospital. So I really, after that, I was like, okay, what can I do to kind of kick myself out of this and in recovery time and all of that? You know, I had to take short-term disability off of work. I had to have 3 months out of work. I had to relearn how to breathe. I had to everything. I had to learn how to walk, how to hold things, because when they do full open heart surgery, your muscles, you can't. I remember not being able to hold the water bowl for the dog, so it was too heavy. So just trying to get back into that of like, how do I really start that? And so I started slowly jogging, And I did my first 5K, 8 weeks after surgery.
Wow.
It was slow. I almost threw up. Like, it was the worst one of my life.
Yeah.
But I did it. And now what motivates me with things like that, especially when I'm doing a race, which I don't do a whole lot of them anymore, but when I was really kind of active in that, was never to finish first or do anything like that. But it was to finish, and it was to be inspired by the ones around me. There was always somebody slower. There's always somebody struggling more. There was always somebody that has a disability worse than yours. If you can remember that, then you show up for them. You know, it's always this impactful thing of like, I can do this with you.
For sure.
We're here together. I can do this with you.
Cool.
So my running thing, after surgery, I did 12 races within that first year. And then on the year mark of my surgery, I did a half marathon in Malta.
Awesome.
In Italy.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did you like that half marathon? I've done one, and I will never do it. I will never do another one
again?
unless I get paid a lot of money. Right?
Yeah. I did one half marathon before my surgery.
Okay.
In Disney, which was fun. It was a princess race because you have so much interaction that it's almost like you don't even know you're running. But after that one in Malta, I was like, okay, this is too much. I'm done. The training is
13.1 miles. That's a little jaunt.
Yeah.
But you hang out with people out here in Colorado, like they're running 100 miles, and they're like,
insane.
this is. There was one guy I had on my podcast, and he has his own podcast, like a Bigfoot podcast. Chris, shout out to you, my man. But he does ultras and things like that. He's actually a school teacher in Arvada as well. So they got a couple kids, so he's doing all the things. But he told me, he's like, when he was talking to me, kind of like after our, it might have even actually been on the actual podcast, but I think it was after we were done. He's just like, my goal is to get you to like run a 100 miler or something. I'm like, dude, I ran 13.1 miles, and I said that was long enough, that was boring enough. No way do I want to run anything. I don't want to run a marathon. I don't want to run an ultra marathon. I definitely don't want to run a 100-mile race. Like it's hard for me to grasp that. And I've had some professional ultra runners come on the podcast, and I have so much respect. But for me, I'm like, no, dude. Like, a 5K, 3.1 miles or whatever that is. Like that's good enough for me. But running, I don't like running personally, but I'm actually pretty good at it. And I ran a lot when I was younger. Done 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon, stuff like that. There's a lot of there's a lot you can learn from running, just like there's a lot to learn from all athletics or any physical activity, because it really challenges you. It can challenge you physically, but it really can challenge you mentally, and it really can give you some confidence and some momentum in all the other aspects of your life. So
no, I agree.
Cool.
Honestly, I think as I kind of slow down my running a little bit, I honestly think too walking does that. Because you get a lot of kind of inspirational thoughts, you get that natural air, you get the, everything going on around you, and it kind of gets you out of that shuffle a little bit. Similar to what running does, right? Running, you're very much more aware of like your breathing and your pace and all those things too, and keeping that up. But I think it's just really fascinating to be able to just step outside once in a while. And, if I'm in a big funk mentally, always, like, stop. You got to get out. I don't care if it's 50 below. You got to get out. You have to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Amy, we're coming up on 90 minutes here. So I'm just gonna ask you. We've had a very thorough conversation. Before I ask the last question, I just want to give you the opportunity. If there's anything maybe that's just like kind of like burning inside of you that you just kind of want to put out there, you want to share with the world, maybe something that we haven't touched on, you haven't shared yet. Just maybe some final words before I ask that last question.
Final words. I would say just keep inspiring. Learn yourself a little bit more. It's always interesting and scary to dive into who you are, but it opens up so many more doors and visibility on life. I think that I have a unique perspective a little bit just due to the fact that I do have a physical condition, so I'm very aware of time. Right? And I think that we all can recognize it a little bit better, that we get one shot here, and so why not take it? Why not take that shot?
For sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. You ready for the last question?
I am.
you already know what it is, right?
I know, and I don't know if I have an answer. But we'll see.
Oh, you have an answer. So the last question I have for you, Amy, is what sets your soul on fire?
What sets life? Exploring the journey, I think, sets my soul on fire.
I like that.
The more travel I do, the more things I see, the more I can get out of my box of just the day-to-day. Really just completely catapults life for me.
Beautiful. I love it. So before I kind of wrap things up here, Amy, why don't you just kind of like share with the listeners again your business, if you want to talk about or share about just Unite, and then if somebody's resonated with your story, just a part that you shared or all of it, where can people kind of find you on social media? If there's a website or websites, the platform is yours to kind of just share that stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me at salesandpresence.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And I really, the whole thing around my company is just to help people up-level their sales skills, but also their connection and communication skills. So if you have trainings coming up, or if you have big things coming up that you're like, I don't know how to be on stage or what to do or how to respond to this, or if you just want to really up-level your skills, because I think a lot of times we're too in the weeds with ourselves, right? We need that extra perspective, and that's what I do, and that's what I'm here for. Unite Business Networking is the company that we launched fully this year. That's the networking, and that's every second Wednesday of the month, and then that's also on Facebook.
Okay,
Unite
cool.
Business Networking as well. You can find us there.
Open to anybody?
Anybody.
Okay,
any business person, anybody who wants to connect and really level up their networking game, right? So we do trainings around that too. So I do a class around actually how to network for ROI, and not run to the room and grab a wine or a drink, because you need to calm your nerves. All those things, those types of things is my world and what I do.
Beautiful. All right, so Amy, I just want to just thank you for the opportunity to connect today. I appreciate you sharing your story and sharing some of your insights from your life and sales and business and your journey. So it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you for the time.
For sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely. All right, so 127 Fit podcast listeners, I just want to again thank you so much for your listening ears. Thank you for hanging out with Amy and myself today on the 127 Fit podcast. If you would like to find out more about my guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast or myself personally, you can find me on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook and LinkedIn is Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be cool. As we are now about a week into the new year, 2020, if you kind of find yourself wanting to improve your health, your fitness, all of that type of stuff, and you just don't know where to start, or you're kind of stuck already, please send me an email and we will set up a free fitness call, and I would love to help you in your fitness journey for this new year. You can email me 127fit@gmail.com. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or a guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can also take this email, send me an email or give it out. Again, the email is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, in which I know you are, another favor I'd ask that you take that specific episode or episodes you're finding that value in and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you guys with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.